Sup everyone, this is Jdogg and Jdog'S DVD Dungeon again. I'll be bringing you something a little different this time. We'll be talking about Jdog'S horror memories from the past. Like what got me into horror, what were some of the first movies that I seen, who introduced me to horror, things like that. First off, I think, talk about probably the first horror movie I ever seen. That would have been George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. I seen that for the first time when I was about 5 years old, I think. Oh, so that would have been in about 81, 82, I think. About 1982 is the first time I seen it. I remember there was a VHS store in the little town that I lived in, and they had a copy of it. And I remember I used to rent it all the time. Used to always lie to my dad, tell him that I'd never seen it before, or tell him bullshit like, oh, it won awards and stuff, Dad, so it must be good. So he'd rent it for me. He probably rented it for me about 6, 7 times before he finally clued in that he kept renting the same movie. And back in those days, like rentals, they were about $5, $6 each, and this is back in the early 80s, so that was big cash. So finally he rented a machine one day, and we went and picked out a bunch of my favorite titles, all the ones he was getting screwed into renting all the time. We dubbed them over to VHS, so then I'd had stuff like Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Nightmare on Elm Street I had dubbed over. What else did I have? Had a copy of the Gremlins, always loved that movie. Night of the Creeps was another one that I got later on. But the real cool thing about all them old rentals that I used to get when I was a real young child, like when the store it finally decided to sell out, so lucky me, I got in there, and look what I have now. I got the HBO edition of Dawn of the Dead. This is the very same one that I used to rent as a child back in the early 80s. I almost creamed my shorts when I seen it sitting there that day I went in. Here's the back. Very, very cool to get this. I was super excited. There's another one that I got that I used to rent all the time when I was a child. I got the original Nightmare on Elm Street Media Edition. This is the exact same one I used to rent all the time, so once again, this big part of my collection means a lot to me. And I don't know, one of the first people to probably introduce me to horror as a child would have been my Uncle Keith. Like, he showed me, I remember being at his house the one time, and we went and rented a movie. And the movie that we rented was Chud. It was the first time I'd ever seen Chud. It was when it first came out. I remember really enjoying this movie. I had a lot of fun with it. I remember it scared the shit out of me. It was something that really stuck in my memory. And lucky me, when the store was closing out of business, I got in. I rented that that exact same version of Chud that I enjoyed as a child. Media released. It's in really good shape still. It's still got the flap on the bottom to fold in. And this is cool, like this was the 1984 release. So this is when Chud was brand new. Really excited to have that. Actually, I have a lot of the VHS that I rented as a child. Like, I went in and pretty much cleaned that whole store out. So it's a lot of nostalgia value and a lot of the tapes in my collection. But another thing I want to talk about was some of my drive-in experiences when I was a child. Like, my dad used to like going to the drive-ins all the time, so I was lucky enough to see movies such as Hell Night at the drive-in. I remember seeing that. Terror in the Aisles I seen at the drive-in. I think My Bloody Valentine, if I'm not mistaken, I seen that at the drive-in as well. We used to go to the cinema quite often. Like, I got to see movies like Friday the 13th, Part 6 in theaters, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, and my dad took me to that one. Really enjoyed it. I know one time there was a movie me and my brother wanted to see, because he was a big horror fan when we were younger. He still is. I like to give him a lot of the movies that I get, try to introduce him to a lot of the stuff I watch, but it was when Tremors first came out. Not really horror, but we had really wanted to see this movie. I remember Dad being busy and he couldn't take us, so we walked we were on the very far end of the city. We walked all the way across to the other end of the city to watch this, just me and him. I was maybe I would have been maybe 10 years old, I guess. He's a couple years younger, so it's kind of scary. A couple of kids walking home at 11 at night, all by themselves, but big horror fans that we were, we had to go see Tremors. I remember that. We were really into that at the time. That was a good movie for kids. But a lot of the other stuff, like the Friday the 13th series, they were really big for me when I was a kid. Used to rent those all the time. Like, I was kind of a strange child, I guess you could say, because I think most kids are playing with like Hot Wheels, and back then it would have been like He-Man and G.I. Joe and stuff, which I had those as well, but like me, I had a cardboard Jason mask that I had made. I used to wear that all the time. I had little machetes and axes and stuff I had made out of cardboard. So here I am, 5, 6 years old, running around, pretending to hack everyone up with my little meat cleaver and my little butcher knife and whatnot. That was a lot of fun. You know, my parents probably thought I was a weird child for being so obsessed at such a young age, but that's what horror did to me. It really grabbed a hold, and it's never really let go ever since then. And like a lot of the other stuff I got introduced in the 80s would have been through my Uncle Wayne, like my mom's brother. Him and his friends used to really be into horror movies. And like I remember seeing stuff such as Silver Bullet with those guys, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, not horror, but I used to watch a lot of stuff like that with them. Monty Python's, Night of the Creeps is where I first was introduced to that from them. And his friend Bart, he used to tape a lot of movies off of Super Channel, a lot of horror movies, and he used to lend me the tapes. Like I had Return of the Living Dead, Deadly Friend, all kinds of good stuff I used to have on VHS tape. I'd watch it all the time. So that was a lot of stuff from my youth. Really enjoyed. I remember pushing my Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead videos on everybody, all my friends. When they come over, I'd be like, you have to see this shit. So blow your mind. And more often than not, I'd creep my friends out. A little bit too much gore in those movies for young children, but hey, it didn't bother me. But I guess I'm kind of rambling on about stuff from the past. I want to get into the 90s. Yeah, the 90s for me, I kind of got out of touch with the horror like a lot of people did in the 90s because there wasn't really a whole lot going on. I was getting into my teenage years, so there was a lot of partying. I was too worried about girls and having a good time at that time, so horror was kind of put on the back burner for the meanwhile, but at the same time, I'd still always go down to the Ma and Pa stores, and every once in a while I'd rent some of my favorites. Couldn't find Dawn of the Dead anymore, though, because the guy that had the store, he transferred it over to one of his other stores, so it wasn't until he was selling them all out that I found it again, which was kind of a luck. But yeah, 90s, pretty bad. I remember seeing stuff as People Under the Stairs at the theater. And I was a big fan of that when it first came out. I was excited. Probably my biggest memory from the 90s as far as horror goes would be the release of the Night of the Living Dead remake. Actually, because being a huge zombie nut, huge Romero nut that I am, Savini nut, all that stuff. I remember seeing that, like, oh my god, Tom Savini's directing a remake of George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. Like, holy shit, this is something I have to see. I remember getting that, and we probably rented that half a dozen times until I finally scored up a VHS copy of it. But as you can see in the background, I have the original theatrical poster for it. I guess that poster's sort of rare, so it's another thing that's really cool. But yeah, the 90s, they were pretty much a bust as far as horror went. Like, I don't know, Return of the Living Dead Part 3 was something else that was good from that time. Mouth of Madness. Oh, shit like that, but there wasn't really a whole lot. But I'm almost out of time here, so I'm going to cut this one off. But this is Jdog and Jdog'S DVD Dungeon. I'm bringing you some of my horror memories. I'm going to do 2 volumes of this, so this is only the first one. So if you enjoyed this, want to hear some more about me rambling on about horror memories and showing you a little more memorabilia, stay tuned. But have a good day, everyone. Peace out. Thanks for watching.